Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Open Spaces with Siera Vernice. We got a guest today, and I'm super excited. I literally put out a Threads post, and it went crazy, and I was like, okay, how am I going to get through all these people? But nonetheless, I connected with Val. I checked her out, and I feel like this is going to be a great conversation. We're going to be talking about healing the version of ourselves that fear love, and I feel like we all kind of need to have this conversation because a lot of us don't realize that we're in a sense blocking our blessings and having issues within ourselves but blaming the next person. So I'm going to introduce you guys to the guest. Like I said, her name is Val. She is an anxious attachment expert, a podcast host, which I love. I like binge listened to a bunch of episodes already. um, she is a confident woman, and she's also a healer in my eyes because those episodes are just like, through your content, everything is just so good because I feel like people don't recognize and realize how our body responds to things and how we react, and just, how the body is made up. So I'm actually super excited to have you because there's a lot to talk about. So that's her quick intro. I can't wait till we get into everything. This episode really will fit the new season, which we just started season 9, which is unfiltered alignment, because I feel like this is where things are going to get messy for the listeners. Now, granted, it's not a bad messy, but it's a messy where you're going to start to realize the truth about yourself, and it might sting a little bit, but it's one of those things where it's like, oh wow, I didn't know this about myself. So we're definitely going to dive into it, and I felt like this was the perfect episode for Val, and also to start off the first episode of season 9. So, um, what I want to do before we get into like all the topics and everything, I want to do a warm up question for you, and I just want to ask you, who were you before the healing?
What a great question. And I think this is really a testament to the work that I have done is who was I before the healing? And I would say completely whole and lovable. But I was really just conditioned that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't lovable, that I wasn't enough as I am. Because a lot of people can look at, oh, I need to do all this healing work. I'm broken. There's something wrong with me. When healing is just about remembering who you truly are and removing the conditioned beliefs, the conditioned patterns, and unlearning survival trauma responses to come back to who you truly are.
I love that answer. I love that. And just to add on to what you said, so I've basically been doing the same kind of work, similar to you, just not focused on anxious attachment. I do want to learn more about that, so that's why I'm like, this episode is perfect. But for me, I am all about becoming the best version of yourself, really peeling back the version of yourself that you've always wanted to become. And it took me a long time. I had a disconnect because I always thought that I had to become a new version. I had to become this new person. But the reality of it was, I was always this person, between the childhood trauma, the relationships trauma, all those things started to come in the way and kind of like, in a sense, shielded me, guarded me from the true self. So it's not that we have to become completely new. We just kind of have to peel back all the trauma and, the, like you said, the conditioned learning to really become the version that we've always been. So I love that. I love that. I love that so much. So I do have the core topic that I want to talk about, but I do want to kind of ask some more open spaces, warm up, hence the name of the podcast. I like to open it up and warm up with some questions so you can answer them. So for the first question, what is it that you are currently unlearning?
Hmm. What is it that I'm currently unlearning? Oh, what a juicy question. I would say like things like I'm currently working on healing some remnants of relationship trauma of a friendship that and healing a little bit from betrayal wounds and just really coming back to who I am. And I'm relearning that I am lovable for who I am as a person. I don't need to do anything to be loved. I don't need to do anything to exist. I am worthy of existing, and I don't have to prove myself in order to be loved. That, and connection gets to be healing. Connection gets to be loving. Connection gets to be safe. That's really what I've been really integrating through
Okay.
this, healing of this.
Awesome. And I love how you are so like reassuring and reaffirming to yourself in the way that you speak. Like I know that you probably do it all the time when it comes to your clients, but like I love how you just answer every question with like reassuring yourself and reaffirming yourself that you are worthy of great things. And I love that. I love that. We have so much work to do. I kind of want to do something beyond the podcast because I'm loving it. I'm loving it already. And we didn't even get into the topic. Okay, and then
Oh.
just another question to kind of open the space up. What truth do you feel like you avoided for a very long time?
Ooh, I love these questions, Sierra. Like, yes. Oh my God, I love these questions. What truth was I avoiding for the longest time? Ooh, I think there was a specific connection in my life where I knew that it wasn't a fit, but parts of me and parts of this friend were like our wounds were just like magnetized toward each other, and I feel like it took a long time really to unlearn, kind of going back to your other question, that I don't have to overgive and I don't have to prove my worth in order to have people in my life, and the right people will feel safe to my nervous system. And there's so much more to unpack there.
Yeah.
And, because if we have trauma, like unsafe people can feel safe, and then people who are safe can feel a little bit unsafe. So we can always unpack more and talk
Yeah.
more on that. But truly, when you're coming from a more secure place and you've done a lot of that trauma work, the right people will feel safe to your nervous system, truly. And you will not have to prove your worth or do anything in order to keep them in your life, because they just love you for who you are.
Yep. I always say that to my clients. I let them know, like, I know it's scary to kind of stop the people pleasing and to stop just kind of shaping yourself based upon what other people expect from you because you want these
Mm,
people in your life, but you'll start to realize that the alignment is really going to be with the people who don't care who you truthfully are. So when you shape yourself to be somebody that you're not, you're really actually attracting the wrong type of people for your life because it's kind of like a fraudulent line to a certain extent. It's like you're faking who you are and now you're having all these fake people around you. Whereas if you are truly who you needed to be, the right people will come. So I love that. I love that. I
yes.
100%
Oh,
agree.
yeah, can I add something about that with people
Yeah, go
pleasing?
ahead.
Oh, okay. Because with people pleasing, a lot of people I hear online, a lot of people are saying it's manipulative to people please. And yes, that is unconsciously true.
Right.
But on the other hand, people pleasing is a autonomic nervous system response, meaning it's unconscious. Like when our body and our nervous system and our brain perceives a threat, it will test, okay, what is safe for me to respond from this threat? Fight, which is get angry; flight, get anxious slash run away; freeze, you're that deer in headlights; or fawn, people pleasing. You're here to help. You're here to appease. You're trying to control how they perceive you because it feels dangerous to be yourself. And really, at the core of every person who's struggling to have healthy relationships and who's struggling with an anxious attachment style always comes down to this core truth. A part of
Yeah.
you believes unconsciously, I am not good enough. So the people pleasing comes in to protect you from feeling that wound. And also, like last year, I did a lot of work on learning my own people pleasing
Yeah.
pattern.
Me too.
And it was wild to
Yeah.
see how people in your close circle react. And that's what ended up happening. Like what
Yeah.
you said, a person that I was really close with, they were like, I feel like you were always a yes person. You were such a different person. And now I feel like I don't even know who you are. And I also feel like real friends who are made for you and like love you for who you are, they will not be benefiting from you people pleasing. They will
Yeah.
feel uncomfortable and feel the tension of the people pleasing and over giving and call it out.
Yep. That's very true. It's very true. It's so funny because I had the same shift like within the last year of like, you know what? I actually don't have to keep agreeing with this person. I don't have to keep showing up in this capacity. So let's not do it. And it's so funny because I feel like I ran into a shift of people that were like, you're mean. And I'm like, good. I'm like, good. I'm
Good.
glad you feel that way. That means you're not supposed to be here. And I'm okay with that. So I definitely get that people pleasing aspect and even how you peel back the layer of the unconscious part. Like I feel like that is so important. People don't realize that we have different parts of us, and 9 times out of 10 we do things not even realizing that it's kind of like just automatic. Like you said, it's just like the way that we've always been operating and thinking that it's been fine. So we're gonna get into it. I'm so excited. So you are very, very strong in the anxious attachment. Now, I don't know if you could speak on other ones, but I know for this particular episode, we'll talk about the anxious attachment and how just aligning with, healing that anxious part of you and becoming secure. I want to get you to really simplify with what anxious attachment actually means because I feel like the internet, we have words and people learn them and now they're saying them all left and right so what could you like how could you explain what anxious attachment is in the most simplest terms so that the listeners who may not understand what it is actually get to understand it?
Yes, what a great question. Really, anxious attachment style is a preoccupation with the relationship. You're chronically worried about the state of your relationship. And some symptoms can look like a fear of abandonment, always overthinking, hypervigilance, lack of trust with other, but also lack of trust from within. Codependency. So, this can look like, and how my clients describe it as, if my partner is having a bad day, I'm now having a bad day. If they're safe, I'm safe. And an inability to self soothe, because as a child, when we have an inconsistent caregiver or an emotionally unavailable caregiver who inconsistently meets our needs, the child learns to be hypervigilant, to read the room, to sense when that shoe is about to drop. And so then, of course, since they were never modeled how to meet their own needs, now, of course, as an adult, you don't know how to meet your own needs because that was
Right.
never modeled to you. So now you're completely dependent on the actions or inactions of how someone else is treating you. And then that makes you, it's a very dangerous place to be because it's like I only am safe when something out of my control is occurring.
Yeah.
And it keeps us out of our place of power. And a lot, this is a whole nother tangent, but a lot of clients come to me because they're like, oh, I'm anxiously attached because of my partner and how my partner is showing up. And yes, if your partner is quote unquote avoidantly attached versus meaning they feel suffocated with closeness, they feel like they need distance and space in order to feel safe, right? For them, it's like with the anxiously attached person, they're drawn to that because they're avoidant to themselves and they're avoidant to their own emotional worlds. And then, so then they want to blame and point the finger when avoidant leaning, I like to say leaning because attachment styles are not fixed. We can change them, we can
Right.
heal and become more secure. But it's like we look at someone who's avoidantly attached and we want to point and blame and say, you're the problem. This is why I feel this way. But someone who's secure or securely attached will say, this is not how I want to be in relationship. I
Right.
do not feel valued here. I'm going to exit. And so we want to point, but they're reminding our nervous system of someone familiar, and we're looking to repair that earlier wound through this person.
That is great. Great. And you know what came up for me? A couple of things, honestly. The first thing I want to touch on, I had to actually write it down because I knew you were going to go in.
Mm,
I was like, let me write it down. Do you
mm.
feel like trauma bonding? And I feel like you talked about this in an episode on your podcast. But do you feel like trauma bonding and codependency kind of go hand in hand, if not the same thing?
Yes, essentially they are. So with trauma bonding, what ends up happening is it could be with, you could trauma bond with an avoidant, someone who's avoidant leaning, or someone who has narcissistic tendencies. And so with these types of folks, they're very inconsistent, right? Maybe one day they're loving you, they're love bombing, they're showering you with all the love and care in the world, and you feel like you're being treated like a queen or a king. And then the next day, they're ignoring you, they're pulling away, they're acting really distant. So the nervous system now loses its dopamine from getting all that love, and it's thinking, what can I do to get that back? So it's intermittent reinforcement. What this means is it's the same chemical that's being released in your brain with people who are gambling. Because they're like, when am I going to get that next hit? It's the same with any addiction. It's just as addicting. Being in a trauma bond is just as addicting as heroin addiction. It is a real addiction, and it needs deep nervous system care. You need to rewire your nervous system. You need to unlearn those addictive patterns. You need to, it's deep work, and you need real intervention for it, because it's not something that you can just go through alone, where, okay, I'm going to go through this narcissistic relationship and then get into another one hoping for the best, because
Right.
you will 99% of the time just repeat the pattern
Yeah.
unless you do that deep work, because
Yeah.
it is so nervous system based, and it's so highly addictive. But yes, codependency is really what feeds the trauma bond, because
Right.
a lot of the time with trauma bonds, what ends up happening is, because these people are anxiously attached and they have a fear of abandonment, if the fear of abandonment is bigger than the pain of staying in this trauma bonded relationship, the fear of abandonment always wins. Because for this person to leave, this trauma bond guy, for example, for him to pick up and leave, that would poke the fuck open your abandonment wound.
Yep.
And trauma has no sense of time. So when you feel like this person leaves and you feel like, oh my God, I'm going to die, I'm fearing being alone, that is not coming from your true grounded adult self living in the present. That is
Right.
coming from a very young part. And that, and people want to say, and point, oh, it was my ex that caused this. Yes, your ex can cause a lot of relationship trauma, but what's
Right.
really happening is it's these unhealed parts of you from childhood or pre-verbal attachment trauma. That's what's running the show. That's what your body is trying to repair from this person. Because with trauma, we have something called the repetition compulsion in our brain that's completely unconscious, where these young parts of us learned, I'm not lovable because my parents were unavailable, and so we unconsciously look for what's familiar externally. So Jimmy, who's avoidant or a narcissist, he's poking
Right.
those same wounds, but we're attracted to that same flavoring. We're trying to unconsciously put an ending to our trauma with someone familiar, to unconsciously prove to this young part that I'm lovable. Look, they're seeing me. They love me.
Yep. That's awesome. And I feel like, to another point that you said, when it came to the anxiously avoidant or avoidant anxiously, however you want to put it, I thought for the longest that you couldn't tell me anything. I was the avoidant attachment girl, like the version that you just described of the unavailable, emotionally unavailable parent. That is me to a T. But then I started to say like, oh, I'm not anxious or I don't suffer from anxiety. And then I started therapy and I was like, oh, maybe I do. Maybe I do because
Yes.
I didn't realize that a lot of the things that I was going through in a relationship, and I'm not in a relationship right now, but previous relationships, it was like, well, where is this coming from? Like, why do I feel like I'm waiting for this person to text me back? Why do I feel like I have to keep checking my phone? Like, I never thought I was like this because I was more so the avoidant person. But then I started to realize that I'm only attracting men who are emotionally unavailable. So it's like, well, what's going on? And it's just like a super
Mm.
huge rabbit hole. So when I went to therapy, she actually taught me about like parts work and doing the deep work of diving deep into my childhood, going back. And I feel like I erased a lot of my trauma, like just from blocking it out, being the avoidant that I am. And she kind of tried to take me back to the beginning of like when I first started feeling like I was abandoned, when I first started feeling like I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel heard. So it was just kind of just like very aha moment for me. And I was like, okay, I have to do the work. I have to be better because, as you said, you could sit there and try to blame the next person and say that, okay, well, we didn't work out, let that go, and then end up in a relationship that's very much the same because you haven't done the healing, the inner work, the deep work. So I really love that. And I feel like it's important for listeners and anybody that's out there to understand how patterns play a huge part in your life. And until you get a grasp on what you went through your childhood, because yes, the relationships play a part as you become an adult, but a lot of that is really rooted in childhood trauma and things that you've experienced, and people don't realize that your childhood plays a huge role in how you are as an adult. So it's just like people need to understand that, and they have to understand that because that's how you start to do the work and you develop into the best version of yourself.
Absolutely. And I love that your therapist does IFS with you or that you've done
Yes.
IFS work. It is so powerful. I love IFS. That's one of
Yes.
the modalities I'm trained in. Oh, I
Okay.
love that. And I love that you really were like, hey, I'm actually anxious right now with these men. And I want to just say, like, we can have different attachment styles or different patterns based on the environment and who we're around. So like for example for you, like you might have been anxiously attached with men, but maybe you were secure in your friendships and then maybe like avoidant in your job or business. That's just an example, right? It's
Right.
like we can all be shifting. And then also if something that another other people don't talk about enough is if you have two anxiously attached individuals, if one is like more anxious leaning than the other one will go avoidant. And that ended up happening to me where I used to always be more anxious leaning. And then when I got into the friendship that I've kind of been talking about since the beginning,
Right.
she was exhibiting a lot more anxious behaviors, and
Hmm.
that kind of caused me to be just like a little bit more avoidant leaning. And
Right.
then with any of my other friendships, I'm very secure. So it also can be very different. And people who are avoidant leaning in general, they always are the most anxious
That's
because avoidant parts protect those anxious parts. They
that's
say,
true.
oh, I don't care. I don't care. I'm pulling away. Actually, you really do care.
Yeah. Oh my God, you sound like you're literally describing me. Because that's, I feel like that's how my previous
Yeah.
relationship was. It was very much like he was anxious. He wanted to know what I was doing all the time, why I wasn't answering. And then I got to the point where
Mm.
it, oh my God, it's so crazy because it, obviously I've come to conclusion with all of this, but just hearing it out loud, it made me really, even today, like I have to unlearn being avoided because I used to think that, okay, this person is so on top of me and being so in the know, it made me push him away. And now, being out of the relationship now almost 3 years, it's like, why are you still acting this way? Like, there, it's okay.
Mm.
Like you said, you feel safe, you feel seen, you feel heard in these new relationships, and that you are creating. And it took me a very long time to realize that we were mirroring each other. So the way that you just described it, as if it was somebody that was emotionally leaning or anxiously leading, it was like that was literally us to a T. And I felt like, okay, you're smothering me, so let me act like I don't care. Let me act like, I need to separate my feelings, and then I became like a stone brick wall. It's actually terrible, and
Yeah.
I'm unlearning that right now. And that's literally something that I'm learning to actually tell myself that I do care about if this person feels, a certain kind of way, or I do feel good about this relationship, or just really reassuring myself that I do have emotions, I do have feelings, because there's been a lot of times where I've operated even in friendships, and it's like, oh, I don't care, like, oh, it can be what it be, like, but it's literally the process of healing, learning, and growing, because I swore you couldn't tell me anything. I was avoidant, but I'm truly not.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like one of my friends, she's like, yeah, I'm very secure in my friendships. But when it comes to relationships, she's like, I am so avoidant, but I am the biggest lover girl you will ever meet.
Yes.
Because it's all just protector parts, right? If
Yep.
especially like Sierra, given your relationship history with this person, like of course parts of you would push away if you're like, I'm being suffocated, like they want too much from me. It's like that can be too overwhelming. So of course parts of you are like, whoa, stop, pump the brakes. And that
Hmm.
probably triggered like other parts from childhood where like your boundaries weren't respected. You were suffocated, you didn't have room to breathe, you didn't have room to be your own person and make your own decisions, etc., etc.
Yeah, it's such a it's a lot to understand just the way that we operate as humans. So once you learn that, it's kind of like, okay, I have to do better. At least that's just how I am. I feel like once you know better, you do better. But yes, that literally, that whole core topic of anxious attachment was literally my life at a point, and still unlearning it, of course, because it's not going to just be one and done. Because there is even a
Yes.
situation that I kind of had within the last couple of days, and I'm kind of in the sense of checking my phone and waiting, and I had the conversation with my friend earlier this morning. I was like, maybe I'm tripping. Maybe, I'm thinking too much into it. And then, like, she said what she said. She was like, no, your feelings are valid. And then I, like, went to the gym. I worked out. And then I got on the phone with her. And I was like, you know what? It's not that I'm avoiding my emotions. It's not that I'm putting my emotions on the back burner, but I was tripping a little bit because I was so anxiously wrapped up in, things being a certain type of way based upon what I wanted and never even communicating it. It's like, nah, I gotta reel it back in. I gotta call a spade a spade. Like I was, in a sense, anxiously responding to whatever the situation may be. So sometimes you kind of gotta call yourself out on your BS too. So I feel like some people need to hear that.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that. And it's like friends are different than a coach or therapist. Like friends can be like your feelings are valid, but you're like actually I think I needed to clock myself. You're like
Yeah.
actually I think I needed to go self-regulate and go to the gym. Because
Yeah.
here is the blueprint, okay? Here's how we actually start to heal from our attachment style, our
Hmm.
insecure attachment style, whether that's anxious or avoidant. Avoidant leaning folks, what you need to do is to start slowly titrating closeness. What this means in plain terms is, okay, I can handle a little bit of closeness. Then I can pull away. I can have a little bit more closeness. It's starting to slowly bring more closeness into your life,
Hmm.
slowly. Feeling safer to co regulate with others. And then anxious leaning people, what they need to do is learn how to self regulate and
Yep.
feel safer internally.
Hmm.
But both really require the same thing. They're just
Yeah.
different coping strategies for the
Yeah.
same wound. Both anxious and avoidant leaning folks, they both are terrified of being abandoned. They just
Hmm.
have different coping strategies to deal with it.
I agree. I feel like that's very important to even talk about. I feel like everything that I was supposed to ask you, we kind of already went over. So I'm just going to look at my notes. Okay, so anxiety and love and dating. So we kind of did touch on this, but I want you to kind of explain how it could show up in relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're asking like how does anxiety show up in relationships?
Yep. And we can obviously
Mm.
focus more on no romantic relationships. I'm like platonic. No romantic relationships.
Okay, perfect. So I think it's like with how anxiety can start to present is like worrying that your partner is going to leave you. A lot of my clients can share some of their worries of I'm afraid that my partner is going to find someone more interesting than me. I'm afraid that they're going to find someone smarter, prettier, more well traveled. Other clients of mine have expressed worries such as I'm worried he's not going to propose. I want to be married and have kids by 32, but he hasn't proposed yet. And why hasn't he proposed yet? Does he not love me enough? I'll be super vulnerable. Like when I was in a trauma bonded relationship and my father has multiple sclerosis. So as a child, I saw my dad chronically getting sick, chronically going to the hospital. And so I would have separation anxiety. Like I would have that abandonment anxiety. And then that would show up in my romantic relationships. Like my worst fear was my partner dying. So that's
Mm,
like other ways that fear can show up. It could show up as like, oh, fearing that my partner got in a car accident, fearing that some people have a fear that my partner is gonna cheat on me.
right.
It could just look like really deep hypervigilance, like always scanning them, always just like on high alert. What are they thinking? Are they mad at me? Did I do something wrong if they didn't answer me? What did I do wrong for them to act in this way? A lot of like self blame in order to protect themselves from feeling that fear of abandonment and that
Right.
anxiety. What are some other ways anxiety shows up? It could just look like chronic muscle tension, and just like more inflammation because you're just very hyper focused on other, and it's also a lot of the times an unconscious distraction from yourself. Truly,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, it feels too big to be with what's in here. Let me hyper focus on what's out there, what's happening with them.
Yeah.
And that's really a lot. Like codependency can feel so overwhelming because it's like, if my partner is not safe, I'm not safe. And then it's like
Right.
we're so preoccupied with their internal world, we're neglecting our own because that feels too big and scary to be with.
Right. I love how you talked about, and this is something that I've just learned recently, and I'm trying to figure out a way to kind of heal it in a sense,
Mm.
but talk more about the actual anxiety in your body and how it shows up. Because I feel like I used to be for the longest, like I'm very tense up here, and I used to always go get massages, and I'm like, it hurts. And they're like, this is where you
Mm.
want your stress. And I'm like, my stress? Like, I'm
Mm.
not stressed. Like, stressed about what? But a lot of the times it could be just the anxiousness that I have that is in my body. So, like, could you talk some more about that?
Yes, that is such a great question. Yeah, so it's like that muscle tightness, that chronic neck pain, shoulder pain, like in your lats, what you were pointing to. That's really big. A lot of women also describe it as like jaw tension, and that a lot of the time is like a fear of expressing your truth. It's like anxiety shows up as like heart palpitations, or like even for me, like especially as I was doing more pre-verbal attachment work, it's like your heart is burning. And then like a lot of clients describe it as like it's a pit in my stomach or it's tense in my stomach. That's
Right.
a lot of where people feel it is like the back, the neck, the chest, and the stomach. And
Interesting.
it's really debilitating because, you know, some people are different, right? Some people feel it as sensations in the body first,
Mm,
where it's like, oh, I feel this pit in my stomach. Now I'm going with the thoughts. Versus some people, they can start thinking about their partner cheating on them. And then that's when they feel the body sensations.
right.
But what people fail to understand is the nervous system will reflect your thoughts. So if you're in a shame spiral, if you're quote unquote crashing out, if you're feeling like my partner's never going to change, this is hopeless, that's a sign you're in shutdown, a nervous
Mm,
system state of shutdown or freeze. And then anxiety is like worst case scenario, rumination, just thinking like, oh my God, something's bad is about to happen. He's about to cheat on me. He's about to leave me. He's about to
Right.
die. He's about to bring up a conflict that I'm not ready for. He's about to say that I'm the worst girlfriend, right? Very like doom like thoughts.
Right.
And people pleasing, if you're in a nervous system state of fawn, that's usually blended with a freeze state. What this could look like is, I don't care what I have to do. Whatever they want me to do, I'll do. I'm here to help you. Whatever you need me to do, I will do so that you don't leave me.
Yeah. That's very true. Thank you for that because I feel like I've never heard about the jaw, going back to the muscles,
Mm.
and the anxiety as well. But I have a question that was not on the list, but I feel like it came up on
Yeah.
my mind. How do you feel
Yeah.
about people who, say, for instance, first date, they met a person, they're talking through the phone, texting on the phone call, and then they have their date and they're on their way to their date, and they have the thing where they say, "Oh, I have butterflies in my stomach." How do you feel about that? Because in my mind, I feel like that's anxiety. But could you explain that as to like how it could show up as anxiety, or is it just maybe your body responding to you about to go into a new experience?
What a great question. It can be anxiety and it can be a trauma reaction. I think
Yeah.
it depends on the date. Like if you are leaving the date with butterflies in your stomach versus like anxious parts, especially as you get more attached to them, that's when more anxiety can start to show up because we can be all secure when we're single, but wait till you get into another relationship. All your parts are going to come back up, and that is the
Yeah.
point of relationship. We we don't know until you're in your next relationship. That's a deeper level of work. Relationships are here to mirror the parts of you that you have not healed. And
Right.
so yeah, I will add to a point. This is kind of going off on a different tangent,
You're fine. Go
but this
ahead.
has to do with first dates. This has to do with first dates. If you have an immense sexual attraction to this person, like you're like, I want to have sex with them right now, right here, that is typically a trauma response. And let me explain why. They are reflecting back to you your attachment trauma and who you most likely needed love from the most. They remind your nervous system of unconsciously. So
That's
the
interesting.
first time, yeah, the first time I met my ex who I was trauma bonded to, and we ended up dating for 10 months. All the typical type of thing. We were living together. We got a cat together. We lived together. We did all the things. We got serious
Right.
quickly. And the first time I saw him, I literally texted my friend verbatim. I said, I want to F this person. And that's a sign that they triggered your attachment trauma. And you
Yeah.
should take a second and, like, what about this person
It makes
do
me
I
want to jump
like?
into
Like,
that.
yeah, like they're reminding your nervous system of something familiar that you want to change. And he's the only person I have had that with.
Oh,
And
wow.
that ended up being like not a great one.
Right.
And he was just illuminating my deepest wounds. Like it's not about him. It's about
Right.
me and what was unhealed within me because if someone healed their attachment patterns, they just wouldn't pursue that person.
Right.
And so that's people want to blame, 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 but it's like what within you is trying to repair with this person? What
Right.
within you is are you projecting onto this person?
That's that's literally so mind-boggling because I've had many instances where I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. And now hearing you explain it, it's like, yeah, makes sense. And it's so funny because now I try not to even lead with it. I try to take it off the table completely when it comes to dating and, just having those relationships that pop up in the dating. So that's interesting. I never knew that. I never
Mm,
knew that at all.
yes. Yes. And something that people don't realize with intimacy, physical intimacy, as women, we are wired to bond and to attach. Well, everyone is. We're all wired for that. But when sex comes into the picture, we can become bonded to them early on because women's bodies produce oxytocin when we have sex with someone, especially if the man, we're talking about heterosexual relationships, if they are not using protection. Because our body thinks, I'm making a baby with this person. It's very real, it's very physiological. And so I always recommend to clients, like, obviously this isn't a one all. Like, of course, this is like, you can, of course, have sex on the first date and have a beautiful relationship and it be healthy,
Right.
but if you have experienced trauma bonds and toxic relationships, I recommend waiting at least 3 months before having sex with someone and wait until you're officially committed
Right.
because sex clouds your judgment because our
Yep.
body thinks we're making a baby with this person. So it will stop seeing the red flags. And that's a whole nother protector part that we can go into. But I really recommend that to clients, truly, to wait if you can.
Val gonna have y'all in the uproar because she told y'all gotta wait 3 months. I know when you
Yep,
said, I'm
yep.
like, three. I thought you was gonna say like a couple dates. I mean, I'm learning, like I'm not actively dating. There is somebody that, I'm talking to again, because it's somebody that I've dealt with before. But I feel like I already kind of made that commitment to myself. Like if and when I get to a deep, intimate, relationship or starting the process of it, I know I'm taking that off the table just based upon before even knowing that it was a thing, but how you had said about looking for that. If you really instantly want to have sex with that person, then you're really looking for that person in an attachment. I already kind of took it off the table because I'm like, I know, and this is not to say that this is for everybody, this is just my personal experience, but I know that when I kind of had sex on the first date or first interaction, because sometimes it was on site. I mean, I can't lie about it. I'm going to be
It was
transparent.
on site. He was hot. Listen.
Yeah, so I know if that doesn't work for me, let's try something different. Again, like I said, when I become aware of something and I know that I need to change it, I'm going to change it. So even hearing this and having this conversation, it's making me understand and realize that, you know what? I'm going to stick to my guns. 3 months. I'm going to say six just for myself. But like Val said, 3 months. Take it off the table completely. Really get to know that person because I feel like as your point when it comes to women, and once you put that sex into play, your judgment is so clouded. Like you see no wrong, you see no red flags. Everything is like everything. Like, oh my gosh, this person is so great. This person does this. This person, and reality is all he did was give you some good dick, and that's that.
I
That's
love
that.
it. I love it, Sierra. Also, to adding to that point, this will
Mm-hmm.
show you if you are looking for a committed relationship, this will
Right.
show you the intentions of them if they want to be with you for you.
Right.
So it's
That's
not
true
just for
too.
you, it's also to test out their behavior and how they
Yeah.
respond. Are they respecting your boundaries or are they trying to push your boundaries?
Yeah. That is a huge one because a lot of times you're only really in that person's life because they want to get that one thing from you, and once you give it, it's over. It's like,
Mhm.
thanks. Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna shift it into our alignment segment. So I like to kind of ask questions to tie in. My whole theme is alignment and making sure that we are living and we are on the same path that we say that we want. So, for the alignment segment for you, what alignment looks like after healing fear?
What a delicious question. What does alignment look like after healing from fear? I will just answer it in an example. Okay.
Okay.
So, for me, what healing has looked like, and I talk a lot about living abroad. So, last year, I went abroad with a best friend of mine. It didn't work out, and that's okay. And then I went back. So after 7 months of traveling abroad together, I went back to my hometown. I was like, "Oh my God, I hate this." It's all. I'm also from Ohio, to be fair.
Okay.
And after living in 85 to 95-degree weather for 7 months, like you just
Yeah.
can't go back. You just can't go back. And it was just like my hometown is not walkable.
Mm,
I just felt very small and constricted and not good in my body. And I was like, ugh, like constricted, like, ugh.
right.
And then I had this opportunity to go to Tulum, Mexico. And then I met my current roommate, and it just felt in alignment. And we didn't even have a phone call. We just like interacted via voice memos back and forth.
Okay.
And it felt like relief in my body. It felt expansive. It felt exciting. And so to me, that's what alignment looks like after healing anxiety and going through that anxiety that anxiety recovery journey. Because really at the end of the day, there's so much more nuance to this. But if you're making a decision, notice, how does my body respond? Is there
Yeah.
constriction and tightness, or is there openness and expansiveness? This does not mean that you might not hold fear about the decision that's open, right? Like I was going abroad completely alone,
Right.
knowing not a single fucking soul. Like I
Right.
met my roommate before, but I didn't know her. I didn't know what was going to happen. But it's like that was full self trust. It felt like a full
Mhm.
body yes, even though there was like natural fear of like, what's going to happen? I don't know what's going to happen when I'm abroad alone. Will I meet friends? Will I meet community? Will I find the right people for me? And I have. And that's the crazy part. Everything has worked out, and I love my life here. So that's an example of what it looks like. And to preface, like with my prior best friend, I remember because I went to Tulum, Mexico last year. That was our first place. And we stayed in Tulum, Mexico for 3 months.
Okay.
And I remember before leaving, I was so filled with dread and fear. And I was so scared. And it just didn't feel good in my body, but I was like chalking it up to maybe it's my attachment trauma acting up because I
Right.
was leaving my friends and family for the first time. Like I've traveled to places, but I've never lived
Right.
away from my family, even a state away, let alone in entirely different countries. So
Right.
so I was like, and I was meant to go on that trip with that prior
Mhm.
friend, because if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be here solo traveling.
Yeah.
But I will say, it's like you will feel the difference. You will feel
Yeah.
the difference.
I can
That's really
agree.
what alignment looks like for me.
Yeah, I can agree when it comes to really listening to your body when you are trying to make a decision, or if you made the decision and you're like, what does this feel good? Like, how does my body feel? How is my body responding? Because I feel like I personally went through the same thing, obviously different situation, but even leaning in fully into my business, it was like, of course, the naysayers and the people around me feel like, oh no, you're crazy. You need to do this. You need to do that. But my body kept feeling like, go for it. It's time. This is what you've been wanting. Act on it. And of course, like you said, you're going to have your doubts, you're going to have your thoughts, you're going to feel, but when your body feels like this is a huge yes and you have to lean into it, like that is literally how I let the fear that I had before kind of like get pushed to the side, and that's when I knew that I was in alignment with what it is that I'm supposed to be doing, and that's where I'm at today. So I
Exactly.
definitely agree because it feels so like with ease. Whereas before, maybe I tried it again, like maybe I tried it prior, but maybe it was something different. And like, and this is just business wise, but I felt like very much there was still a tug. I was still drained. I was still. It's so funny because now I think about it, it's literally like a full circle moment. So I used to do business coaching, and I had a marketing agency, and I did everything, and I was so drained. I was still maintaining full time jobs while I was doing it, but I was so drained. I was so tired, and it got to the point where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore, but I'm going to keep holding on to it. And it took me to feel like, okay, I completely have to break away. And I took a whole year off. And within that year, the life coaching started to come into play, the alignment talk, the becoming the best, all the things would come about, and then it would start to feel like this is easy. And then in 2025 I ultimately made the decision, like, this is what I'm going all in with. Like, this is what I wanted. Even when I was younger, I tell the story on the podcast all the time, I always knew that I wanted to impact and empower people. I just never knew what it looked like. So when I started the business coaching and the marketing agency, I'm like, okay, this is it, this is what I'm going to do. And I've made a bunch of money, but the purpose, the feeling of, just peace and ease wasn't there. And now it's like
Mm,
I literally wake up to do what I love. And it doesn't get any better
mm.
than that.
It doesn't get any better than that. Ooh, I got goosebumps when you said, I'm here to impact and empower people. Because absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely, when you follow that excitement, like it doesn't mean that there won't be fear there, but it
right,
means that I can act despite this fear, that
right.
this calling feels greater than me. This feels
Hmm.
bigger than me. I am providing a service. God is coming through me,
Yeah,
communicating through me. This is bigger than just me. That's
yeah,
your heart. That's your soul.
yep. I love that. I love that. So one more question for the alignment part. I want to get you to kind of speak on how the anxious attachment actually disrupts your alignment.
Mm. What a juicy question. Okay, I'm saying that to all your questions.
That's
I
fine.
can tell that you've like thoroughly thought these out, and I love that. So how does anxious attachment like disrupt your alignment? It completely disrupts your alignment
Yeah.
because when we're anxiously attached, we're not connected to who we are. We're not connected to our body. We don't even know what the fuck we want because
Yep.
we're hyper focused on other because we learned that we needed to do that to survive. And so for me, that was my biggest New Year's resolution was connecting back to myself after, this rupture that I had with that previous friendship. And man, have I learned that like holy fucking moly. It completely disrupts every area of your life because when you're anxiously attached, you're in survival mode because our nervous system correlates with our attachment style. If you
Hmm.
are anxiously attached, you're stuck in a fight or flight response. But when you learn how to regulate your nervous system, which I teach clients, that's when you will become more secure because you will now enter into what we call a ventral vagal state, which is just a fancy word for saying you're regulated, you've entered rest and digest, you're relaxed, you're calm. And what I want and is my ultimate goal for clients is for them to say, and now I think just like with my marketing, I think people have like more aligned with the message
Yeah.
of regardless of what happens with my partner, even if they do divorce me, even if they do break up with me, I want to feel secure within myself no matter what happens. Because secure attachment, I can be with uncertainty, I can be with the worst of the worst and still be okay. I am still
Right.
safe in my body. That's that's what true alignment looks like. That no matter
Yeah.
what happens externally, I am okay internally. So when we don't have that and we're anxiously attached, that completely disrupts our alignment. Because with anxious attachment, we will overlook red flags. We will people please. We will overgive. We will overfunction. We will stay in relationships past their expiration date because we're
Yeah.
acting and operating from young parts of us. And those deserve to be held with so much compassion, so much unconditional love, and so much respect because they're just adaptations to an abnormal environment. But you can see how that would completely disrupt your alignment in life. And
Yeah.
when I was with this friend, my hair was falling out in clumps. I had so much acne. It was insane. Like we were in the Dominican Republic and she's like,
Mhm.
your hair is all over the floor. And even like last month, I asked my current roommate, she has two dogs and a cat. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh, like it might be hard to tell. But have you ever seen any of my hair like on the floor? And she's like, no. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, like your body will tell you when you're out of alignment. Anxious attachment
Yeah.
will disrupt your alignment. So I love, love, love that you asked me that
Yeah.
question, Sierra.
And I feel like a lot of my clients don't recognize that they are in survival mode and in that constant fight or flight mode because they think that it's normal. They think that, this is just who I am. So I try to teach them that in order for you to get out of the survival mode, you actually have to understand that you have to get back to you. So going back to the childhood trauma, going back to prior to the trauma and realizing there was a part of you that was whole, that was, had the peace, that had the ease. So it's like we need to get back to that. So I always recommend them to start getting back to that version of themselves. And you could have been maybe 4, you could have been 5. You may not really remember it, but we have to kind of let the trauma go by the wayside and heal from it and start to really become that version of ourselves that we were when we were peaceful, when we didn't have any, not necessarily stress, but the trauma didn't really condition us to be how, we are today. So I think that's very important, speaking on a lot of people being in survival mode and just being in a different space. So we love this whole
Yes,
episode,
and
y'all.
oh, me too. And to just add to that point that you mentioned there, some and like for me, I've had different points where in my life I did have that original imprint and original template of I'm loved, I'm whole, I'm enough, I'm lovable as I am. But if you've been living with chronic stress and trauma and
Yeah.
you've had CPTSD, and I definitely had CPTSD, I will say that you might have never had that original imprint because it was never learned. And so things that I also teach clients is something called adult self anchoring. So when you're anxiously attached, like we've talked about in this episode, your safety comes from other. And so we're looking for that attachment externally. So I utilize certain practices like physiological shifts. I first have them do different holds with their body. I have them do memory reconciliation of, remembering what is a time you felt proud or capable. And if you're a trauma survivor, that might not come to your mind. So then it's like, okay, imagining you can see a tree or a mountain in front of you. Can you sense its steadiness? It's
Right.
sturdy, it's grounded. So you're feeling that energy from the tree or mountain. You're not separate. That grounded feeling is coming from within you. So when we're doing that over and over and over again, and then pairing it with a straighter spine, pairing it with our chin up straight, pairing it with our posture being open, what's happening is we're replacing that secure attachment that we're looking for with other back into ourself. Now we're
Yeah.
now the safe, securely attached adult, and we are now our own safe anchor now. So that's also something really deeply important when it comes to healing your anxious attachment style.
Yes. And I feel like you kind of just spoke on some of the things that I was going to ask when it comes to healing and becoming secure. But I think getting in tune with yourself and grounding is just like top tier when it comes to healing and even becoming secure in like from your attachment style, whether it's the anxious or the avoidant. So that's really good. So for us to close out, I do want to get you to say maybe a thing or two. It doesn't have to be a lot. I feel like we've said a lot in this episode, but just something that listeners can do today to start to regulate their nervous system and kind of heal that anxious attachment.
Mm, I would say I'm like one thing.
I
I
know
would
that's you can
say
do 2 or 3. I know it's kind of hard because
yes. No, that's okay. I can keep it to one or two. I would
okay.
say the first thing is to shake every single day. So, somatic shaking. When something that you need to understand is when we're at an 8 out of 10 plus on anxiety, we're about to have a panic attack. No words can calm that. You can't tell
Yeah.
yourself to just calm down and relax. So, what we want to do is to start by just shaking out, like literally shaking your arms, shaking your chest, shaking
Hmm.
your legs, bouncing it out. That's something that can be really helpful to do daily. And then another thing is vagus toning. We didn't talk about that, but when we've had chronic stress or trauma, we have something called our vagus nerve, and it
Hmm.
stops functioning efficiently when we've had chronic stress or trauma. So we stay in a hypervigilant, always anxious state. So when we start to stimulate your vagus nerve, that's when our baseline will shift from that hypervigilant, anxious state to calm, regulated, secure. And that's over time. Like, you have to be consistent with it. Like, we can't just act like we've had 20, 30 years of trauma and then
Right.
act like in 5 sessions we're going to be
It'll be
completely
away.
healed.
Yeah.
So, like,
We
this is
wish.
just like those two things I would say
Okay.
to start with to become more secure, because you're teaching your body relief can come from me, not
Hmm.
just the outside world.
Right.
And so those are and then those are two different things that I teach my clients how to do as well in my 8-week one-on-one freedom from anxious attachment blueprint.
Righty. And then this is one thing that I feel like my listeners, no shade to y'all, because I love y'all, but they
No shade.
cannot stand on a boundary for anything. So if there is someone that is listening that is anxiously attached, could you give them a boundary or two to set so that they can start to regulate their nervous system, so that they can start becoming more secure within those selves because they don't have boundaries, and I hate that for them.
Sierra, I'm going to counteract that. If someone feels unsafe in their body, if they, because that was me. I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I know I need to set this boundary. Even
Hmm.
like, this is going to be like a vulnerable share, but even like in that trauma bonded relationship I was in, there were points where I was like, I know I don't want to have sex with him, but like I'm doing it anyway. And it's like
Yeah.
that's a way that we're traumatizing ourselves by not setting boundaries. But it's like when you're a child and you learn that it's not safe to use your voice, it's not safe to set
Right.
boundaries, or I'm punished for using boundaries, our body is going to stop us because it does not feel safe. And
Yeah.
so to start, we want to start feeling safe in our body. And as we do that, like by the vagus toning, the shaking, some of the things, adult self anchoring, some of those things that we mentioned, when we start doing that, our voice and our no is going to become more clear. You're going to feel more connected to your body, and you're going to be like, oh, this doesn't feel good to say yes to this. And then I want you to start slowly practicing it in a safer environment, right? Like, maybe your friend asks you to go to the coffee shop and you say, no, I'm not feeling like it, or I want to rest. And then they respect it. That's when your body's going to learn, okay, what if it's safe for me to say no?
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, some people, like Sierra said earlier as well, some people who are dysfunctional aren't going, they benefit you from being a yes person. Like
Yeah.
my previous friendship. They don't like it when you're people pleasing. So the sooner you can start to feel safer in your body, feel safer on your own, because ultimately when we're people pleasing, we're protecting that young part who feels I will be abandoned if I set a boundary. So
Yeah.
when you start to heal the fear of abandonment, feel safer in your body, you're naturally going to feel safer to set boundaries.
Yeah.
And that can also start with yourself, some internal boundaries, okay? Like maybe I scroll for an hour before bed. What if I can do 30 minutes instead?
Right.
What if I tell myself I'm going to do one vagus toning exercise when I wake up and I follow through with that? What
Right.
would that look like for you now? So it's like these are some small ways to do it, but also realize that your body, you're going to have immense guilt when you start to set those boundaries. And that is completely normal when you're starting out. And being so gentle with yourself, and you're just know that you're doing a great job. And it will become easier as you continue doing it, as you are surrounding yourself with the right people after trauma.
Yep. I definitely was the person who didn't really feel safe to express my boundaries, which is probably why I hold all my stress up here. Because
Yeah.
it was very hard for me to express because I felt like nobody would hear me, nobody would understand me, nobody would see what I see and understand how I feel. So I do agree that it is a little hard to set the boundaries. So like I said, y'all, no shade, but start. For me personally, I did start with myself because at first I was
Yeah.
saying like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna set the boundary for this person and express it," and I never did because I was so scared to say it. So I started within myself. I started to tell myself like, okay, instead of doing this, do this, or you said you were going to do this, now show up and do it. So I agree. Starting with yourself always works because it's kind of like that integrity piece when you say you're going to do something, you do it, and you stand on it, and then you start to feel that safeness within yourself, and then you can go and branch out and feel like you can say it to the next person. So I love that. I love
You
this
got it.
episode. I thank you so much for coming on the podcast so quick because everything literally happened. I got you on Threads. I met you on Threads, and what was that, like Saturday? I think it was Saturday or Sunday. And here
Yeah.
we are on Tuesday, and I'm like, yes, perfect. And I actually have more recordings. I think you're the only one today, but I have more to record tomorrow. So I just thank you so much for joining me for this hour. I appreciate you. What I want you to do before you leave, I want you to plug your podcast and anything that you have to offer to the audience. If they want a one-on-one coaching session with you or whatever it is that you offer, if you could let them know and how they can connect with you.
Oh, thank you so much, Sierra. Yeah, so I have my own podcast, like Sierra mentioned. So I have a podcast called the Anxiety Recovery Podcast. It talks all about how to heal your anxious attachment, overcome chronic anxiety, and how to really build secure, healthy relationships after trauma. So I'd love for you to listen there. And then also, what I've been doing is right now I have a special where I'm doing somatic inner child healing sessions where I do some body based work, some inner child work to really show you the power of somatic therapy because right like what we said, we can't talk our way out of anxiety, we can't talk ourselves into setting a boundary when it feels unsafe in our body. So if you resonate with anxious attachment, know that I hear you, and that's who my services are for. And yeah, so I would invite you to just send me a message of saying like, "Hey, I'm interested in trying out your work," and I can give you a special and a discount for the first session. And yeah, and then we'll go from there. And then I have an 8 week one-on-one freedom from anxious attachment blueprint that really walks through all the steps on becoming more secure.
Awesome, awesome. And just give them your Instagram name. I'll still plug all your stuff in. If you
Yes.
want to send me your links, I'll plug it in when I post everything. But you could just let them know your Instagram or whatever you want to connect them with.
Yeah, yeah, you got it. My Instagram is Heal with Val, so HEAL with VAL.
Yep. That's Val, y'all. Yay. Again, thank you so much. Anybody that's listening, if you feel like somebody needs to hear this, if maybe your friend you kind of know, she's the yes girl, he's the yes guy, whatever it may be, I always encourage y'all to send it to your mother, your brother, your sister, your cousin, whoever needs to hear this. Send this over to them. Me and Val had this conversation, and honestly and truly, I'm ready to have another one.
Oh,
Because I feel like there's so much that we didn't touch on. But this was a very educational podcast, and I know that I've personally learned a lot. So even if you guys listen and have learned something, leave us a comment, leave us a review. Because, of course, without your rating and reviews, people won't know that this podcast actually exists. And make sure y'all go check out Val's podcast because I was listening to a couple episodes and I was just like, ooh, I love this. I knew this was going to be a great conversation because just the conversations you have with your guests and even your solo episodes, they were great. And I was like, I actually have to finish listening to the one that I was listening to because I had to start this. But I was like, I love the way that you talk. I love the way that you present yourself and you have the information. So thank you again. We will definitely be connected, and I'm sure that we'll cross each other's paths again and potentially maybe have another podcast episode. So thank you so much, Val.
oh, thank you so much, Sierra. I love being on the podcast, and just thank you so much for the opportunity to connect today. And yeah, I'd love to come on again. And yeah, thank you so much.
No problem. I'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right,
All right,
perfect.
bye bye.